Hi, podcast listeners. Today's episode is a best of compilation pulled from the Fine Homebuilding podcast archives. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Enjoy. Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Deputy Editor Matt Milham.
What up?
Design Editor Kylie Jacques.
Hello.
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hello.
Please email us your questions at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Hello, Patrick. I don't know why they didn't salute you guys.
We don't matter.
Questions for you. It's all you. We can leave now.
Love the show. Happy to oblige the request for more questions. I recently purchased a small cabin in real tough shape in the Hudson Valley in New York, Climate Zone 6. I'm planning to personally repair and renovate on a small budget with the intention of having it as a weekend/rental place. It was built around 1950 and has been unused for almost 20 years. There's some water damage, but I think the majority of the roof sheathing, original foundation, and wall structure are surprisingly okay. The original 500 square foot of the building has a CMU crawl space in pretty good shape, but I think the back 250 square foot porch that was enclosed at some time to add a bedroom and move the bathroom. There's a step down into the addition, and it was built with a ledger on the main house crawl space wall, and the remainder of the addition is on a strange precast hollow core pier that I've never seen. He sent a picture of that so we can put that up on the podcast page. The building corners cantilever off these piers. Any idea what these are? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I can salvage this section of the house. I'm not sure if it was ever permitted or safe. I plan to tear this section down and want to rebuild on a similar footprint. But as I am trying to do the work myself, I love the idea of digging down footings down to 48 inches or more. I don't love the idea of digging down 48 inches or more.
Right.
And trying to build forms and pour foundation walls for a crawl space. Could I alternatively go ahead and dig down to below the frost line, but then use a pressure-treated wood foundation wall and gravel for my foundation? Or B, pour a frost-protected slab on grade, per your article, Frost-Protected Shallow Foundations, number issue 216, and then frame the new addition out of wood with a mini floor between the slab and the existing floor level. Wow. Okay. There's so many options here.
Is Steve Basic's concrete surrounded by foam an option?
Isn't that what he's talking about? A frost-protected shallow foundation?
Is that what that is?
I would think so.
Okay.
I think that's a great solution.
I didn't see it referred to that way, but
so there's like this
4-inch
kind
pad,
of,
kind of.
Yeah, and it's in the prescriptive code, frost-protected shallow foundation. It's just a means of using rigid insulation at the soil level to keep the slab, sub-slab soil warm enough that it doesn't freeze.
Right. But you also have to keep that building at like an average mean temperature like across the year of like 64 degrees because the building itself is sort of the warmth coming out of the building
is keeping the soil from freezing
above freezing. And that's something that I think was said in that article that I kind of picked up on as soon as I saw it. I was like, that's not right. Because I think Mark was saying that the building does not provide any heat to the ground. And so like you can insulate under that as much as you want. And that's not the case. And they bring that up both in the guide that is mentioned in that article and in the code itself. So
so you can do a frost-protected shallow foundation in an unheated building, but you have to use more or less insulation. I forget
you basically have to excavate out entirely underneath the foundation and then put down the foam. Actually, you have to put down, I think, at least 6 inches of sand and gravel fill, then your foam, then do your little whatever the haunch is going to be.
To contain the concrete.
So you basically put a bunch of fill on top of that, leaving the haunches, and then you fill in with your concrete, and that would be the unconditioned building condition.
Right. And I don't know, so if this is a seasonal place, it could be unconditioned much of the time. So you would have to consider that if you were picking one of these systems.
Because in that case, he would have to excavate a lot more than he would if he were just digging around the perimeter for the footings.
Yes.
Going down 4 feet. I mean, that would...
It's even more digging.
It's
and
even
he's
more
trying
digging.
to get away from the digging.
Yeah.
I think this is a great solution for helical piers.
I thought you might bring those.
Right?
Yeah.
You bring in the machine, it drills the piers into the ground, you put beams in the saddles, and you start building. And there's no excavation at all. It seems like an ideal solution.
Seems maybe
for
less
this.
expensive too.
Certainly, if you value your time. if he's going to have to dig this himself, this is his. If he says he wants to work on it himself, I would say, crazy.
Or he could just do cast piers. I mean, just bring in a bobcat with an auger on it, and then
He in upstate New York are going to put an auger into the bony soil. You
it
think?
depends on where
That's why
he
that
is.
pier's broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell where, he didn't say exactly what town he's in, but I mean, if he's in like a floodplain or something like that, you can easily get down 4 feet. If you're in the vast majority of the Hudson Valley, you're going to be hitting rock immediately.
Which could be a deal breaker for the helical piers too. But
Yeah. That's the thing. There is, depending on where he is, there's a lot of very shallow bedrock. So,
in which case you could just pin right to the bedrock and build on that,
yeah.
right?
But what are these little piers that he's talking about?
I have no idea.
No.
I've never seen anything like that. It looks like a square concrete column about 18 inches square, wouldn't you say?
Maybe something like that.
And it's got a circle of hollow, circular hollow area, cylindrical hollow area in the center.
Yeah. It looks sort of like the Easy Tube. I think Mike Girton wrote about that a few years ago, and we used them on a deck project when I was in school. But these things have a much bigger hole down the middle, so I don't know that it's quite the same thing.
It's like the opposite of a pier. It's like
Yeah.
a hole.
Inverted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
I imagine at the top it had a much smaller hole in the past, but who knows?
I'm wondering if it wasn't like some kind of culvert that they put on end
Sort of what it looks
and
like,
build
yeah.
on. I've never seen anything like this. And that's the beauty of what we do is there's always some weird thing coming to our attention.
Yeah.
Did he
So
say
that-
what year the house was built?
1950.
But then this is part of the addition, these pairs, right?
Yeah, and that
So who knows?
who knows how much later that came, but
Right.
Yeah.
it's not uncommon to convert porches to living space.
Right.
It happens all the time,
Yeah.
especially in kind of campy places like this. But those of you who are listening and are curious about these wacky precast piers, although they might be pipes, I don't know. If you go to our podcast page and take a look, and hopefully you can help us identify what the heck they are, I would love to know.
Yeah.
Looks rustic,
Yeah.
the cabin.
I like the look of it.
Yeah. That's one term for it. Tear down is another.
But that's the kind of beauty of this kind of project with
Yeah.
Don't
this kind
discourage
of
the guy,
buyer.
Matt.
I mean, like, this is going to be, I would love working on this on the weekends, right? You go up there, get away from everything, and work on the house, because I wouldn't want to sit around in it because it's kind of gross.
Yeah. Bring a tent and a can of bear spray and a 6-pack.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
He had another question here, too.
What?
Oh, yeah. He was
Question
talking
two.
about
Okay.
insulating.
You want to read this one?
No, go ahead.
Oh, my God.
You're the reader. Besides, he
two.
addressed you specifically.
That is true. Question 2. If you have time, for renovation of a house like this, what is the expectation for insulating the building? The cabin had 2x8 ceiling joists filled with fiberglass bats and a plastic vapor barrier behind the gypsum, and walls were bat-filled 2x4s. But it needs to be fully gutted. Trying to get this building up to current R49 standard for ceiling seems prohibitively expensive. I plan to have a mini-split system and some type of wood-burning stove. Can I get away with just restoring the insulation to what it was previously, or will I regret not putting in the extra insulation when I'm spending time up here in the future winters? I debated whether to mention it, but I am an architect, commercial construction, and have done a couple of home renovations before, but no ground-up construction.
I've had that very sentence uttered to me by many an architect when I get on the phone with them.
They weren't sure whether they should
from
mention
Fine Homebuilding, right?
that they were an architect. More importantly than the insulation is the air barrier, right? We got to establish a good air barrier on the outside of the house. This place has what looks like board and batten siding. That's going to be really leaky. So you're going to have to figure that out either from the inside when you pull down the insulation, or you're going to have to figure it out from the outside, which would mean taking off all the siding.
Yeah.
And boy, once you're down that path, it's the whole 9 yards.
Well, if he's going to put in, what do you say, mini split system? I mean, it seems silly to put that in without having
A good thermal envelope.
Right.
Well, to get a good thermal envelope, you first need an air barrier. So
Yeah.
spray foam on the inside of that board sheathing would be tempting to some, but I don't know if I like that idea.
Airtight drywall.
Yeah. What about the sheathing on the outside, though?
Don't care.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You don't care because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to remove that, is he?
I don't know. It's a small building. I mean, like, you know,
Yeah.
what?
It looks so
nothing-
nice, though. What is
It's
that,
cute.
hemlock?
It's got a great
Yeah.
look. So I don't know.
I did the math for the R49 cellulose in the ceiling anyway. It's not that cost
It's
prohibitive.
cheap, right?
It was $743.40 plus tax if you buy the stuff at the box store, and that's 63 bags of the stuff. You buy 20 bags, you get the blower for free.
They don't give you the blower. They let you use it.
No, they let you use it. Yeah, so you can borrow it and blow it in yourself. But so basically, for under probably $800, you can do this job yourself.
I especially in the attic, that's a no-brainer. But you got to fix your air barrier first, right? It's like blowing as much, you could blow as much insulation up there as you could fit in there. But if you don't have a good air barrier, it's not going to work as well. So
yeah, but exterior sheathing's not going to take care of that.
No,
that's going to be
it's going to be the ceiling.
Right.
It's going to have a good drywall ceiling or do some this stuff. These kind of places are very rustic. They have lots of air leaks, so you need to seal up the inside.
Yep.
Or the outside, or both.
No can lights.
No can lights. Make sure that pipe penetrations going up into the attic space are sealed around, at top plates and electrical wires and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not going to pull off the siding, I would be very tempted to put in 30-pound felt folded into three-sided structures against the existing board sheathing, and that'll kind of stand in as your WRB and protect the insulation from getting wet. And then I think I would put mineral wool in there just because it fills the cavities better than fiberglass. I don't think
That's the first time I've heard you say something like that.
why?
You never talk about mineral wool.
I was just reading a paper.
So I'm a bigger fan of cellulose generally, but like when someone is doing the work themselves, like you can't dense pack walls, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense.
I was just reading a paper. It was written in like 1962, and it was like looking back at this wall system that was built in like the 30s, 1935 to 1937, and they had basically that sort of assembly, like with the felt and mineral wool. And I was just like, it was just weird seeing them talking about this.
It makes a lot of
so long
sense,
ago.
right?
Yeah.
I think so many building solutions are like what makes them like common sense. Like let's not make it complicated. Let's fix things.
Yeah.
So building science all about making it as complicated as possible. Add another layer.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't be though. It should be
layer
very
for that.
simple. Got your control layers. That's been the effort to like simplify, right? You don't think it's succeeded?
I just know if I had this place, I would leave it as is, get a wood burning stove, and
And just heat the snot out of it.
Yeah.
There's wood
that's
everywhere
me.
around it, Like, why worry about it? That's what every old Vermonter would do too, right? They're living in the same house in Vermont. Then we heard from Dave from Plainfield, Vermont. Hey there, FHB podcast crew. I love the podcast. Thank you for keeping it going. I was listening to you all talk with a certain briny wit about... I had to look that up.
I think he was specifically referring to you.
Briny. About how anyone trying to claim a warranty on asphalt shingles should basically collect four-leaf clovers and wish upon a shooting star, because it ain't going to happen. My neighbor is in the throes of a fight with BP. BP is not British Petroleum, but a maker of building products. Over her 25-year shingle blowing off her house in a breeze after a 15-year service life, I found myself saying, yeah, good luck with that. She rolled her eyes saying, I know, but someone has to try and hold these blankstards accountable eventually, right? So my question is, what the heck? How do shingle companies get away with this, and why do we let them? It's like some evil joke we all know about, and the best we can do is be cynical about it, which I guess on some level is just the simple truth. When I have a client asking about shingle warranties, I say something to the effect of, well, a 20-year shingle lasts 10 years, a 30-year shingle might last 15, a lifetime shingle, well, I guess it'll last half a lifetime. I don't think that's true, because a half a lifetime would be, 40, 50 years, right?
Yeah. You think they last less?
I do.
Probably.
I think especially in a southern climate.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Does it get brittle?
Yeah, the sun cooks them.
Yeah. I mean, shingle color, I think more than anything they've figured out is what either adds or detracts from the longevity of the shingle.
Hugely.
Yeah. So the darker it is, the less long it's going to live.
I don't know if I've told you guys, but my parents re-roofed their house in the mid-'80s with white shingles, and they're still like new.
White roofs are the way to go.
And sadly, they're kind of ugly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He says, a shingle has a tough job to do, let's face it, so why the dishonesty and why the runaround on fulfilling warranty claims? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I don't know that I have a lot to add, except that we all know it's a crock.
Yeah.
And like Matt says, white shingles last longer than dark shingles, or light shingles last longer than dark shingles, I should say.
Yeah. But I think they do it they don't honor the warranty claims because they can get away with it. Apparently, I mean, there's
And
enough language in there,
And they're prorated. So,
Yeah.
right, they give you a lot of coverage at first when shingles are going to be fine. But once you get into the, half of their design lifespan, you get nothing. And it's
Yeah.
only shingles anyway. And
Right,
anyone will
they're
tell
only
you.
covering the material.
Yeah.
You're not covering the labor and the removal of the old shingles, which is probably going to cost more than just. I mean, shingles are cheap. And
Shingles are
that's-
$100 a square.
Yeah,
Architectural shingles, I bought them not that long ago. They're 100 or a little more per square.
and that's why people keep using them.
Well, they're not all created equal, right? Aren't there better brands that you should go with?
I don't know about better brands, but there are certainly products that are thicker and last longer. But all of the manufacturers that I'm familiar with have had very serious failure problems at one point or another, and enough so in some cases to put the companies out of business or have them absorbed by other shingle manufacturers, what seems to be happen more often.
But yeah, there are better materials out there. I mean, the problem is, I don't know if the problem, but I think it's just like the way that Americans buy and use houses. Like, we don't buy houses to live in it for the rest of our lives, typically like a European might. Like, you don't buy one house and that's the only house you're going to buy in your entire life. You may think like, I'm going to be here 10 years, 20 years until, the kids move out and then we're going to move to another house.
Till the
So what does
shingles
it
need
matter?
replacing.
What does it matter? Yeah. So what does it matter if the shingle lasts a lifetime if I'm only going to be in this house 10, 20 years?
That was kind of my
I don't
attitude.
care.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been watching that same carpenter next door re-roof. Well,
Shingle?
he's been shingling right over the old shingles.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
No,
No, you can do it.
It's common though.
Yeah.
I've done it. I'm a little embarrassed to admit. My sister was trying to sell her house and needed a new roof, and we put shingles right over the existing ones.
How'd that work out long term?
I don't know. It didn't matter to us, right? That's what you were just saying, or
Right.
you were just saying that it's like it's not my problem. The last time I was there,
That's the problem.
It is the
it's
problem.
that attitude.
yes, agreed.
Yeah.
It's hard to get people to spend money on a house they're not going to live in, though, right? And I totally understand that.
Yeah. If they're spending money for like projects on their house, they're things that are more useful
Satisfying.
to them and
Yeah.
satisfying. Yeah. Like, you're going to expand, you're going to make the house bigger or something like that.
Or new countertops.
Or new countertops, or something that like is actually like you're looking at every day and using every day, rather than the roof, which you're using it. You don't realize you're using it because that's what's keeping you dry and warm. But
You mentioned other products, so like metal roofing jumps to mind.
Right.
which will last forever. Slate will last. I mean, you can hundreds of years, if not longer. You can take those off and reuse them.
Does
if
anybody
something
use
goes
slate
bad.
roofs anymore?
Yeah.
It's rare.
It's rare. I mean,
so
it's very,
expensive,
very
right?
expensive.
Yeah.
That's the
Very,
problem.
very expensive. And finding someone to do
tedious.
it is very difficult, I'm sure.
Yeah,
There's a
it's
very specialty
craft.
roofing craft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked for a guy. That's what he put on his house, but it did take a very long time, and he hand cut everything.
Wow.
So it was,
I'd love to
it's a
see that.
big
Very-
job.
We should get that story.
yeah,
That'd be a
But
great
that's
story.
a roof that'll last hundreds of years, potentially. Sometimes the flashing wears out, but that's why people put copper flashing with slate commonly,
yep,
because it's going to last as long.
Yeah.
yep.
Last house I lived in had one. Slate roof. It was from the early 1800s.
I've had this conversation with a bunch of people. They're like, "Oh, what kind of roofing should I get?" And I'm like, "Well, I would go metal."
Yeah,
and they're like,
metal.
"Well, but all my neighbors have shingles," and that's another thing we're up against, right? Is like,
Right.
people want their roof to look like all their neighbors' roofs,
Right.
And
But-
I don't really understand that.
It's like, what kind of car should you get? BMW. But all my neighbors have Kias.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, is that what you want to aspire to?
Right.
What can you say about the longevity of cedar shingles?
So, coincidentally, I was in an event last night where the Connecticut Home Builders Association had a little get together at a local lumber yard, and they had food. And what caught my eye was one of the big lumber trucks with a piggyback forklift on the back had units of wood cedar shingles on it.
Nice.
And I was like, that is a lot of dough sitting on that truck. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. This thing was loaded. And I was like, where are you guys selling this? They sell a ton of it in southern Connecticut, right? The Greenwich area.
Yeah.
All these homes have
Money.
red cedar roofs.
The Gold Coast.
And they last 50 plus years if they're done correctly. They need to be on an airspace of, most people use a product called Cedar Breather, which is a matrix like Brillo looking pad material, and you put the shingles on that, and that allows them to dry on the other underside, which prevents them from cupping, which is their big downfall if they can't dry both ways. the people used to put cedar shingles on skip sheathing, which had like little slats of wood and then spaces in between, and that allowed similar drying, but that's way more labor intensive.
Yeah.
And doesn't have the same diaphragm quality that panel products do.
Can you use that cedar breather on the siding too?
Yes, you can.
Underneath siding?
Yeah. Yes, you can. But they make a product better suited to walls because it's thinner. So cedar breather, I want to say, is probably 3/4 or 7/8 inch thick. If you try and put that on a sidewall application, you have to pad out your doors and windows and penetrations to allow for that additional thickness. The other product they call Home Slicker is thinner, and it eliminates some of those problems of the wall assembly being too thick for doors and windows. Am I right?
I think that's right.
Is that Benjamin
Home Slicker.
Benjamin Obdike.
Obdike,
Yeah.
right.
Home Slicker and Home Slicker HP.
What's that one? It has a
That's the one
WRB?
with the WRB.
Cool.
Yep.
We also heard from Ian regarding episode 184. Your Bay Area emailer touched on a topic that I believe plays a major role in keeping craft alive, how we as established tradespeople can train the next generation in the field. I strongly believe that those of us in the field are at a point of leverage for making a difference. I have some advice for apprentices based on my time as an apprentice. And I like this so much, I'm going to read them all, and I'm calling this Ian's 8 Commandments for Apprentices.
I like it too.
Do you want to read one?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Nothing is learned from constant success. Try it, screw it up, think about it, repeat. After 30 or 40 years of this, retire.
I think Justin would appreciate that.
Yeah.
He's told me I need to start cutting into my house more.
That's what I say. He's just like, you have to make mistakes.
Just rip it apart.
Yeah.
And then fix it. Figure it out.
Ask every stupid question you think of, but never ask more questions that you can give considerate thought to the answers. So I guess that means don't ask a question that you're not willing to like take to heart or at least think about, right? Mm-hmm. Show up early, learn how to set the job up. Better yet, ask at the end of the day how to set the job up for tomorrow. I think showing up early is a key to my success and my job. Like every time I show up on time for a photo shoot, I'm late. If I get there ahead of what I think I should be there, it's just in time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You got to prepare.
You got to get ready. And I don't know what it is about contractors, but they always think they want to be like totally ready for and going when I get there. But I need to be getting ready too.
Yep.
Watch how the experienced people in your trade set up their work. How do they store their tools, set up their workstation, arrange the material, etc. If you cannot figure out why, ask. Most guys would love to tell you.
Pick somebody who
is organized.
Though. I mean, I've seen plenty of guys who've been doing this for a long time.
And they're a
whose
disaster.
trucks are a mess.
Yeah.
Clean as you go. That's
Yeah.
my motto.
Yeah.
I do that too.
I think it's really key.
I think it's helps with safety too.
Absolutely.
If you're not tripping over stuff and
It applies to anything.
I agree. Understand that you will likely be seeing and experiencing things out of sequence. I think what he means is like when you're starting out, you're not going to be there for the whole job. You're going to get snippets of jobs at different places, right?
Yeah.
So until proven otherwise, you are viewed as cheap labor and will get bounced around. Reading, watching videos, and helping someone from the crew on a weekend project will begin to fill in much of the rest. Make peace with the following. If you learn how to build a shed, you know how to build a shed. If you learn how to cut straight and square, read a tape measure and a level, use a square, make accurate marks, and apply right triangle trigonometry, easier than it sounds, he says, then you will possess the foundation needed to build anything.
That's my favorite.
It's great, right?
I mean, it speaks to somebody like me who's a novice. He makes me feel I can do it.
So he's pointing out learn the skills, not how to build a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Break it
Teach
down.
a man to fish.
Okay, Matt.
I think we need some more cliches, right? The correct answer to how much lumber can you carry is 2 more sticks than the boss. This is my favorite. I've heard something similar to like, what's the best way to coil an extension cord? And the only adequate answer I've ever heard is whatever the way the boss wants you to.
There's a lot of debate around that.
Oh, you wouldn't believe.
I can't
And
believe
everyone
it.
thinks that their way is the right way and everyone else is an idiot. Except my way is the right way.
Never roll it up.
What? How?
Just never coil it. Just leave it long.
Oh, that would drive me insane.
Yeah.
Never put it away.
Oh my gosh. Finally, he adds, if an employer or crew is not giving you what you need to learn, find one that will. It is okay to move around when you are learning this business, in my humble opinion. Well, thanks, Ian. Ian is a lead carpenter and estimator for Hudson Valley Preservation, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. We should make a blog post out of that.
Out of
Just a great little...
Ian's eight commandments for apprentices. I think you're totally right.
We need to post that somewhere.
It'll definitely be on the podcast page right away. Andy from Norfolk, Virginia writes, Dear Fine Homebuilding Podcast, I've enjoyed the podcast. I just finished listening through all the episodes. As a DIYer with moderate skills, I've used the podcast and links you post online for a bit of a crash course in home building. I'm in the process of converting a 1924 leaky home, which I purchased about a year ago, into a net zero house. I'm working with a building scientist out of Charlottesville, Virginia, so I have most of the air sealing and roof venting plan down. However, my question is more about the aesthetics. My home has a large brick walkway leading up to the front. The oldest photo I could find is an aerial from 1978, so I know the bricks are at least that old, but not the same type of brick as the foundation. While the foundation of the home is lime-based mortar, the steps on the front of the house and the walkway are some type of Portland cement. My question is about how to restore the walkway. The bricks of the walkway are still in the correct spot. They've not sunk or moved. However, the area between the bricks is overgrown with grass. I can't tell if there was mortar there or just sand. Do I point with a Portland just like it was a wall? I've heard of polymeric sand being brushed in, so we should tell folks what that is. So this is like a bagged product. It's made for paver patios and walks, and when you're done laying all the stone or pavers, you put this in the joints, and that prevents the weeds from growing. Mm-hmm. And it's, as I understand it, and I might be oversimplifying, but it's a fine sand with what amounts to white glue inside. It's like adhesive.
You're a fan, right, Matt?
I think it's
recommended that before.
I think it's fine. Yeah.
It can stain the brick.
So there's one wrinkle.
Right.
There's one wrinkle with this. The manufacturer's website, Sacrete's product, says do not use on clay brick as it may stain them. Dun dun dun. So he's obviously got clay brick. I was wondering, what kind of other brick is there? I guess there's concrete brick, but
I don't know if that counts as real brick. They may call it brick.
Yeah, and people call concrete pavers, not brick.
Yeah, but there's concrete pavers that look like brick.
Right, but it's concrete.
Brick. Yeah, but it's
brick is clay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right.
Someone's going to write in and tell me I'm wrong about that.
I think you're right.
And they're going to be wrong.
So this probably does have a concrete base and probably was mortared if those bricks aren't moving around.
You think?
Or haven't moved. I do.
I think it's got a good
looks like
gravel.
Mortar. There's mortar in there. If those bricks are as level as they look, I would bet money on the fact that...
Well, so you're our landscaping core of the team here, so you would say that it's impossible to lay that brick...
I wouldn't say it's impossible, but my guess would be that there's a
concrete base.
Yeah.
And the bricks are on top. Mm-hmm. And that works because it's North Carolina, right? Because if you did that around here, it would
just crack. And
it would get
bricks
water in it.
For the Northeast. Yeah. So the Brick Industry Association has some really good information.
Lay it on me.
As you might expect. Well, this is just sort of an aside, but because we've talked about stained stone before, I thought this was interesting. They've got information on preventing different types of stain on brick and like what causes them, and that each is a unique situation that should be handled chemically differently. So this broad, using hydrofluoric or hydrochloric acid, they're not recommending that as it's not a cure-all.
Right.
So, but that doesn't answer this guy's question, but I just thought it was an interesting aside. So either way, he's going to have to get in between those cracks and clear them out, no matter what he's...
Can't you just spray Roundup on this?
Jeez, Patrick. Actually, you know what he could use?
I know my wife would kill me if she heard me say that.
He could use a flamethrower.
But I think that might make the bricks crack.
No. I've used flamethrowers on brick before.
That's how you make brick.
You just move quickly.
You burn it.
So you're referring to one of the brands is the Weed Dragon, right? So
I'm talking about an actual flamethrower.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So this is a thing you hook up to a propane cylinder and you light it on fire, and it makes this awesome sound that sounds like a hot air balloon.
Yeah, it's a blast.
And it
I love it.
It attracts the neighbor's attention when you do this because I have one of these things.
And then you can easily get in between those cracks and get rid of the material.
And the idea is not to burn up the plants, but if you hit them with a heat, even briefly, it kills them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're easily removed.
And it smells really good. It smells like burnt vegetation when you're done with this process, I can tell you.
You could also just get some of those FRP roof panels and put them over top of it for about an hour. It'll kill the grasses.
How do you know that?
Put them in the shade. Went to the box store to get the metal. Got home. It was in the sun. Probably been in the sun for about an hour. Got a big rectangular patch of dead grass.
Oh, boy.
I've heard of contractors telling me the same thing when you put clear poly out on the lawn, that you'll kill your client's grass in very short order.
The flamethrower is more fun.
That's just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What should he put between his brick?
So, Tony wrote to us about the paver patio versus deck thing, right? So he sent us a link to this website that shows this matrix product that he's using as the base for his pavers, right?
Right.
Wait, can I just interject and ask if there's another layer between the pavers and that product? Is there something else in there?
I think it's sand.
Just sand.
I think so.
Like bedding sand.
But-
I think,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't really know.
Okay.
But that was my recollection.
Okay.
But
Proceed.
so this company that makes this matrix for the pavers patio bed also makes a polymeric sand that doesn't stain brick.
So they say.
So they say. And one of the secrets to not staining the clay brick is to make sure they're really dry, because clay is very porous. And if you put the sand all over the brick, it's going to dissolve the glue component, and that's what the residue that's left behind. So apparently this product that they make, and it's Alliance is the manufacturer, G2 Rapid Set Intelligent Polymeric Sand.
Nothing like smart sand.
It brings new meaning to pound sand.
And if you stain your brick, you can go to the Brick Industry Association's
Just to get the
page
stuff
on
off.
how to fix it.
And I would say just try this stuff on a spot and see if it works.
Yeah.
And if it's dry, try it.
Yeah. The one issue you sort of run into when you try to use sand with brick or anything that's just rectangular like that is there's not a lot of rotational interlock with brick or anything that's just a rectangle like that. With like cast pavers, usually they kind of like lock together in a certain way. And bricks don't really do that, especially when you have joints the size that this guy does. They're not really touching each other.
Yeah, because all brick are not uniform by any stretch, right?
Yeah.
They're not all the same shape.
Right, but the bricks themselves aren't even touching. So if you're just putting polymeric sand or anything that's not really like cementitious or whatever in there, then depending on what the base is, I would worry a little bit that it would start to get a little wonky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just the whole sand thing.
You don't like?
I don't, because this is what it's going to look like in 2 years.
What's the alternative?
Mortar.
But you can't do that in much of the country. In North Carolina, it's probably fine. But, you can't do that up here.
Well, that's why I like decks better.
That's why you want to move to North Carolina. I was surprised. I was expecting a train wreck. I think the sidewalk looks fine
Yeah,
to me.
I mean, there's something
excepting for the weeds growing between the joints.
Maybe he just needs to deal with the weeds and not
worry about
Yeah,
it.
not worry about it.
Get the weed dragon. Mm-hmm. Have some fun. Mm-hmm. Make the neighbors stare at you.
And you only have to do it every 3 weeks or so.
I wouldn't say. I mean, I do mine twice a year.
Really?
And, yeah, but it gets bad before I do it again.
Yeah.
You're laughing at me.
Well, it's not that. I think I just imagine you letting it grow so that you
Can burn the snot
so
out.
it's just much more dramatic when it does happen.
Yeah. That's any excuse to buy a weed dragon. I'd say just do.
I've never heard it called that.
That's one of the brands.
It's a brand. Okay.
Yeah. Don't buy the cheap one from. Oh my God, where did I get the first two I bought? Northern Tool and Equipment. So there's the $50 one and the $80 one. So of course I bought the $50 one first, and it broke quickly. So I sent it back. They sent me another one that broke. I sent that back and spent the extra at $30 to buy the good one, which I've had for years now. So don't buy.
How do you tool it around? Do you just move the propane tank by hand?
Yes. Yeah,
I had to do, when I was using one, I was working at the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle, Washington, and I had to care for a lengthy gravel path / road, and I had to do the edges of it every 2 weeks or so. And it was a long way to haul a tank by hand.
They're heavy, right?
So I put it on a dolly. I had a whole system rigged up.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
didn't have goats at the zoo? Just
No.
drag one of those around on
Yeah,
a leash.
that would have been.
To eat the vegetation?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the roses.
Yeah.
I thought you meant to pull the propane tank.
Probably do that too. Gum it all up.
I think goats are fun.
Yeah.
They are. I have seen them in action, taking care of hillsides and such.
Yeah.
So here's some recommendations, like with regard to using polymeric sand on clay brick. First one, red clay brick are a candidate for staining under any conditions, so it's best to avoid them. Before you apply the sand, you want to make sure the pavers are completely dry most of the way and through if you want to avoid staining. This means waiting if you've used a pressure washer or if it's rained. It's important to remove all the dust created when you put the sand down. After you've swept everything that you can into the joints, a leaf blower set on low and held at about a 30-degree angle will gently remove the excess dust. This dust is what caused the stains once wet. When watering, it's important to add enough water to saturate the sand, but not so much that you float the polymers out of the sand. So they're saying wet it, but don't like saturate, soak it.
Mist.
Protect your finished patio while it's setting. Cover it with a plastic or a tarp. Make sure to direct pedestrian traffic for 24 hours and vehicular traffic for 72 hours away from where you worked. There you go. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Deputy Editor Matt Milham
What up?
and our very special guest, former FHB Senior Editor and Carpenter and man about town, Andy Engel.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you, Andy.
Yeah.
We also asked listeners for help with building watertight rooftop decks in episode 187. Good subject, right?
That's a good subject.
Hard to do.
It is hard to do. You have to always be thinking about repairability,
Yeah.
because
I always think about ice,
yeah,
right? Because if you build a flat deck that holds water and it has to hold water,
right.
it's going to freeze. Ben Bogey, who's a lead carpenter for Colbert Building in Portland, Maine, answered our call to contractors on their methods. He says, regarding rooftop decks, I've dealt with this a few times, and here's my standard operating procedure. If it's going over a level surface, you need to create pitch. On a wood frame, I use pre-pitched polyiso roof insulation, which slopes 1/4 inch per foot. I think that's what we said also, right? If we're going over a concrete slab system, we apply a bond coat and create a pitched dry-packed mortar bed like an old-school shower pan, and then an EDPM or EPDM or TPO glue-down membrane tied into the wall, WRB, and terminated at the edge with a sheet metal drip edge. On top of the membrane, I use Bison or MRP deck pedestals. Do you want to tell us what those are, Andy? You're familiar with these, right?
Sure, they're a plastic screw jack almost, a low profile thing. You've got a base and a top that screws into the base.
And it's adjustable.
And
so
it's
you can-
adjustable, yes.
So you can compensate for the pitch underneath, right?
Exactly, and especially if you're working on a concrete deck, they're never exactly
Flat.
Flat.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's a nice product. It's not inexpensive, I'm
no,
sure. But
it's not. And you need a bunch of them because you're talking usually about a pretty low profile deck, so you're not typically putting down 2x10 joists.
Right.
You might be putting down 2x4 sleepers or something like that.
That's his method. He said he puts these on a 16 or 24 inch grid with 2x sleepers on the flat on top of the pedestals.
Right.
The pedestals are screw adjustable for level, and once everything is tuned, the pedestals are glued with a high quality compatible exterior adhesive like OSI Quad Max or similar. If there's a concern of wind uplift, I install a 4x guard post before starting any of this, tied into the structural framing, flashed and counter-flashed at membrane install, and then the outer courses of sleepers are tied to those guardrail posts. It's not the lowest cost method, but it works and is pretty simple for the average carpenter to pull off correctly. I think that's good advice.
And it's got the advantage of not having any roof penetrations.
Yes, and as your point was, you could pull these this wood framing off. The pieces are going to be pretty small, and then you could repair the roof membrane, and which you're going to have to inevitably. On the subject, we also heard from our friend Bob of Home Remodeling Pros in Annapolis, Maryland. He says to check out Duradeck or Deck Tech. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, Duradeck and Deck Tech are thick vinyl membranes. Like you'd have thick vinyl flooring that's waterproof, right?
I'm not familiar with those two.
I believe I know that's the case with Duradeck, but I'm not sure about Deck Tech. But it's just think of thick, heavy-duty sheet flooring, and that's your waterproof layer that's also your walking surface.
Okay.
So it's got a kind of texture on it. You can have it look like weathered wood or stone or what have you. It seems like a good solution, and I'm betting it's going to be much less expensive than Ben's method, but it's probably not as durable.
Vinyl flooring for your deck.
Great, right? Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to everybody for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Thanks, and happy building.